let's be clear about one thing. The Romans hated kings. I mean, they built their entire republic on the idea that no single person should ever have absolute power. So how on earth did they end up worshiping their emperors as gods? That is the incredible puzzle we're going to unpack today.
Seriously, just think about that for a second. The whole Roman Republic was born from kicking out a king. The idea of turning their leaders into deities, it feels like a complete 180-degree turn. So let's dig in and figure out how this frankly dangerous but totally fascinating transformation actually happened.
You see, this wasn't some simple overnight change. It was a massive ideological problem that the brand new Roman Empire had to solve, and it had to solve it fast. Okay, so here's the fundamental clash, right? On one side, you've got centuries of Roman tradition. Leaders are mortal men, period. The gods are, well, gods, and you don't cross that line. But on the other side, the new empire had a very real, very practical need. You've got this massive territory from Britain all the way to Syria, filled with different cultures. You need a powerful, unifying figure for everyone to rally around. And making the emperor seem superhuman, that was a pretty good way to legitimize a new kind of one-man rule that, let's be honest, went against everything the old republic stood for. And the very first person to walk this incredibly dangerous tightrope was Augustus. What he came up with? Well, it was a masterpiece of political and religious maneuvering that would basically set the rules for centuries to come. Augustus was an absolute political genius. He knew he couldn't just storm into Rome and declare himself a god. So, to get the old guard on his side, he did the exact opposite. He became the ultimate traditionalist. He restored 82 temples, held a bunch of important priesthoods, and eventually became Pontifex Maximus. That's basically the head honcho of Roman religion, the most important religious job there is. The message was loud and clear. Hey, I respect our traditions, I'm one of you. But, and this is where it gets really clever, while he's playing the perfect traditionalist in Rome, he's quietly changing the game. He never ever claimed to be a god himself, no. Instead, he encouraged people to worship his genius. Now, the genius is a really interesting Roman idea. It's not the man himself. It's more like his divine spirit, his guiding essence. So you could honor the emperor's authority without technically worshiping a living man. Plus, all his coins called him Divi Filii, son of a god, because his adoptive father, the famous Julius Caesar, had been officially deified after his death. It was the perfect way to be divine without actually saying it. And you can see exactly how this two-tiered strategy played out. In the provinces, far away from the watchful, conservative eyes of the Senate, they could be a lot more direct. We have this inscription from Narbo in what's now France, where the local people literally pledged to worship Augustus's divinity forever. He could let that happen out there, while back home in Rome, he kept up the image of just being the humble first citizen. Brilliant. So Augustus creates the playbook. He lays down the unspoken rules. But now, his successors had to try and walk that same tightrope. Let's see how they did. His successor, Tiberius, was famously, well, reluctant. The historian Tacitus tells us his public stance was crystal clear. I am human, performing human tasks. He was deliberately leaning back into that old Republican ideal that Augustus had so carefully pretended to follow. And look, we don't just have to take a historian's word for it. We have cold, hard proof. This is the Gythian Decree, an actual inscription from a town in Greece. They wrote to Tiberius asking for permission to build a temple to him, and his official response, a big fat no. But he tells them they should absolutely build one to worship the now deified Augustus. So you see what he's doing. He's rejecting personal worship, but he's totally reinforcing the system of the imperial cult. A few decades later, the Emperor Claudius follows the exact same playbook. In a famous letter he wrote to the people of Alexandria, he draws a very clear line in the sand. He says, sure, you can put up statues of me. You can even mark my birthday as a sacred day. But a temple and a high priest for me, a living man? Absolutely not. He's carefully managing the honors, just like his predecessors. And then came the emperor who didn't just fall off the tightrope. Oh no, he took a sword and sliced it in half. Gaius, who we all know better as Caligula, just threw all that subtlety and caution right out the window. Yeah, no more of this divine spirit stuff. No more being the son of a god. According to the historian Cassius Dio, Caligula just went for it. He didn't just claim a connection to the gods. He claimed to be Jupiter, the king of the gods, walking around in the flesh. All those honors that Tiberius and Claudius had so carefully and publicly rejected, Caligula demanded them. Temples were built for him. Sacrifices were made to him. as a living god. This was a massive break from every Roman tradition imaginable. And just when you think it can't get any more bizarre, it absolutely does. Cassius Dio tells us that Caligula made himself the high priest of his very own cult, and then appointed his favorite horse, Incitatus, as his co-priest. This wasn't just him being crazy. It was a calculated, deliberate slap in the face to every religious tradition the Romans held dear. So Caligula's reign ends exactly how you'd expect, in assassination. It was a total disaster. But here's the weird thing. His extremism actually made things clearer. It showed every single future emperor exactly what the line was and exactly what not to do. Just look at Nero. After a conspiracy against him failed, the Senate offered to give him divine honors. But according to Tacitus, Nero rejected them flat out. He even said that those kinds of honors are only paid to emperors when they are no longer among men. He saw the danger Caligula had ignored. But at the very same time, you see coins like this, where he's actively promoting the fact that his predecessor, Claudius, had been made a god. The lesson was learned. The system works, but you have to play by the rules. So there is, the chaos of Caligula's reign actually helped finalize the unwritten rules of the game, what we call the Augustan Compromise, and it was basically a three-step process. Step 1, the emperor rules as a man, a mortal. Step 2, the emperor dies. And step 3, then and only then, if he was considered a good emperor, the Senate could vote to officially make him a god. It was the perfect, stable political solution. For centuries, this strange compromise held the Roman Empire together. But it leaves us with this huge, lingering question, one that goes way beyond ancient Rome. What happens to any society when its leaders are no longer seen as just mortals, but as something more? That's a question that still echoes today.